I don't think anyone ever would put a musician and a talk show host and a mathematician together and say that's the mix of skills we need to unlock the capability of the future. But that's the type of creativity I'm talking about.
Hey, it's Mike Hill and you're watching Futurists.world, your home for big ideas about the future and how to shape the world of tomorrow. Today is going to be remarkable because we're catching up with technologist, futurist, Imagineer and experienced executive Katherine Boiciuc on the future of leadership. Katherine, or KB as she prefers, is a global leader with extensive experience in the technology and telco industries. From Geelong, Australia, KB worked her way up the corporate ladder of Telstra, Australia's largest telco company. Over a period of 19 years, she reached executive level where she oversaw enterprise operations, and in doing so, she built a reputation of being a fearless change advocate. Today, Katherine is an associate director at Maximus, a professional training and coaching firm. So get ready to imagine a better future. And remember, if you don't want to miss a beat, subscribe to our podcast at Futurists.world. Welcome back, everyone. I am super excited today to be sitting down with Katherine Boiciuc and talking about the future of leadership. How cool is this? Give us an elbow. Hi, Katherine. Thanks for joining us here at Creative Cubes.
Thanks for having me.
Leadership, where are we going to start? How big do you want to go? I mean, maybe we should just define it a little bit because there are leaders all over the place. And, you know, I guess many of our minds would go straight to political leaders, but I'm not sure if I want to dive in there. How do you define leadership?
I think through my study of leadership, I have come up with my own definition, and I think that leadership is like beauty. It sits in the eye of the beholder. So I might think that I am dressed like a leader, I behave like a leader, I'm showing up by a leader like a leader, but unless you recognise my actions and what I say and what I'm doing as leadership, it doesn't matter. So it's actually outside of my control if people see me as a leader or not. And so when you start to realise that it's about serving others and about, you know, the image that you create in other people, about the impact that you're having, it allows you then to think differently about how you might show up as a leader.
And what a great way of looking at it, because it really is in the measure of other people in terms of how well you're doing there. So the pandemic's really created this huge social reset, and I'm interested in the opportunities that's affording to leaders in terms of accelerating some of their plans that might have been in a far horizon to now act on them in a shorter time frame than they may have otherwise been looking at.
I think Bob Johansen, in his book The New Leadership Literacies, which was published in 2017, wrote, of the next decade, it will be the most twisted and splintered, the most turbulent decade of our lifetimes.
Wow, what a visionary. So that was in 2017 he published that.
Yes, and I think that when you think about that statement, being it and the disruption that we're experiencing, or we've all experienced over the recent months, is that leaders that have been traditionally in places of leadership because they are in their sweet spot, they have the experience, they have the knowledge, they're the safe hands and they know what to do, are finding themselves leading at the very edge of their competence. And right now is an opportunity to say, okay, if we look forward and we thought about the next decade, what was possible, the reality is we've just fast forwarded 10 years.
Wow.
In the space of 3 months. So how do we use that information as the mobiliser and the catalyst to now have future-focused leadership and look for future-focused leaders and future-focused leadership capabilities like foresight, like digital disruption, like gaming, and how do you combine those skills and really start to set up your organisations to think very differently about leadership. And that is going to cause a rapid change in what the types of leaders are that are leading organisations today, because we don't need 20th century leadership anymore. We need 21st century leadership, and we are redefining it as we speak.
So things that have a real urgency around them, like dealing with police brutality or climate change, do you think that they're going to be net beneficiaries from this big reset, or do you think it's actually going to set those causes back?
I think that we are going to see both in my conversations, and we speak to around 8,000 leaders over the last few months, working with organisations across Australia but around the world. And we are seeing bright spots that we all want to take forward, and we've made significant gains on. And we're also seeing and hearing from leaders that they are fearful that we are going to let go of the progress that has been made around some really significant, well-versed, well-worn arguments around flexible work, around the ability to educate from home. Do we need to have so much travel in our work lives? And so we need to be, as leaders, I think leaders that you see that are prepared to let go of those long-held beliefs and are prepared to be curious and open-minded are going to be the ones that are able to create the most opportunity and are able to maintain the progress that's been made for their organisations and the legacy that their organisation is trying to leave.
Yeah, and I think it takes some courage on behalf of leaders to try those things, because not all of them will succeed, some will fail. So what other key principles are in play around leadership today in this climate?
I think that if you think about the traditional leadership and that 20th century leadership, it was about rigid hierarchy, power, control. And if I think about the attributes of 21st century leadership, it's about clarity. It's about anchoring to people to purpose. It's about thinking with abundance and being curious. And that allows for a fluidity of leadership that we haven't seen demonstrated before. And so I think that we will see people that are going to try and revert back and will use that traditional style of leadership to defend the castle. Yep. And then you're going to see the entrepreneurs, the curious, the people that are there off to build the new city and the new world that we are all asking for. I don't think anyone wants to go back. I don't think anyone wants to go back to life as it was prior to, this pandemic. I think that we have learned too much and made too much progress to allow for that to happen.
Is it an overstatement to say there are really no safe choices, no conservative choices that can be made in the current climate, so you may as well try things and take some risks?
Yeah, I think that there's two choices I think that are missteps. The first is to do nothing,
yep.
And the second is to wait and see what everyone else does. Because the pragmatic reality is that there is opportunity in gaining first ground, and there is opportunity in being the first. And there is going to be so many firsts we see. We're seeing alcohol companies become hand sanitizing companies. We are seeing, one of the largest roadies and stage crew companies now become a furniture business building desks. We are seeing so many pivots, and the pace of the pivots has been faster than we've ever seen before. So if you are holding out for safety, fear of making mistakes, the pragmatic reality is you won't make any progress, and by the time you decide to, the actual opportunity that you had available in the market is gone, because everyone else, there's a whole army of people and an army of leaders that are making decisions to just try it out, and we can iterate, we can pivot, and we can still course correct to create value. So I think the multi-year planning and the linear nature of decision making is gone. It is parallel, place your bets, let's go on a quest, let's be clear about the value we're looking to create, let's be anchored on we're using our purpose as a compass, and we're off.
Fantastic. I'm interested in talking to you about how you got interested in futurism and what led you on that journey. Could you tell us a bit about the background about how you got into this area?
Sure. I grew up with a mother who was a leader, who started off as a teacher and became a very senior CEO in her own business. And I had a father who was a council worker and an army officer. And at many times, that meant that our family was spread across the world, either mum in Asia or dad at Puckapunyal. And so for our family, the way that we kept our family together was through technology. And so I have spent more than my fair share of minutes, listening for AOL dial-up internet to connect, and me waiting for that inbox and that chat box to open to have a chat to my mum or my dad. And so it allowed me, it's no surprise that I ended up in a really large technology organisation like Telstra, because I always wanted to be close to providing the technology and the tools that allowed for people that you love to stay connected. It was very personal. When you have a look, in particular the time I have spent in Silicon Valley at the Institute of the Future at Berkeley, you know, with listening and learning to all amazing companies like LinkedIn and Facebook and Google, etc., you realise that the future exists. It's just not evenly distributed. And so there are people right now that walk out of their houses and they're used to seeing every second car doesn't have a driver in it. They're that comfortable with autonomous vehicles. And the thought of walking outside of this building right now and seeing every second car not having a driver, I think would freak most of us out. And that's what I mean in terms of the future does exist, it's just not evenly distributed. And so then I became fascinated about how do I take this piece of the future that exists and start to become an ambassador for it and start to get people curious and excited about exploring it and what those advances in technology can mean for every industry that we work with. And so that's where I caught the bug. And then I caught the bug to say, why aren't more leaders spending time here? What is it about what we've said to leaders that it's important for you to know and be good at, that for some reason talking about the future isn't one of them? And understanding that there is a whole set of leadership capabilities that exist that I'm very sure that people are not interviewing and testing and, you know, having development courses on. You can't go and get your MBA in futurism. You can't, but you can go get your MBA, you know, your Masters in Management or Business Administration.
That's true, and a lot of that is retrospective, looking back at past examples. And a lot of times that senior executives use is on putting out fires, really. So how much time should they be spending on projecting forward into the future, in your opinion? And what kind of horizons should they be looking to? Is it, you know, 3 months, 12 months, 5 years, 10 years?
I think that the runways are everything from why do we exist? So there's some quite deep pause right now and go, is our purpose still our purpose? And right through to 3-year planning. So it's still all open. It's a blank slate essentially.
Yeah.
But the leaders there are some leaders that are saying, I'm going to wait until October. I'm going to wait until things are face to face. I'm going to wait until it feels like how it did before. But the pragmatic reality is we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And so if you're waiting for a face-to-face interaction, let me tell you, there are teams that are meeting, you know, 3 times a week, half-day virtual workshops that are working through the pivots they need to make.
Yeah.
And that they're defining their future now, they're placing their bets and they're mobilising their teams to pivot. And so I think that being comfortable with starting again, being comfortable with let's cast our eyes back over things. It requires thought and thinking space. And let's be honest, the leaders I've been speaking with and coaching, they're exhausted.
Yeah.
They are exhausted. They have been on a marathon.
Yeah. And it's not going to stop anytime soon.
No, it's not.
It's an ultra marathon.
Correct. But what you can do is combat that decision fatigue, combat the feeling like you're running on the treadmill, but you're actually not quite sure if you're doing the right things anymore. Am I really anchored in the right purpose? You can actually instill hope, and we talk about leaders right now need to inject energy into the system. And the way you do that is by giving people the space to connect, giving people the space to talk about how they're feeling and what's going on, but also anchoring them back to purpose. You know, every day we all wake up and we want to be making a difference and we want to know that what we're doing matters in the world. And the most important thing leaders can do right now is to give people time to have that clarity, to reconnect, to take that breath and say, thank you for the sprint. We know it's been hard graft. And it's time for us to go again because we want to, we're going to make these changes and these pivots. I'm keen to hear your thoughts. How do we create this future together? And that's a very different approach to designing the future.
It's also a different approach to communicating because that type of authentic vulnerable. Communication is not what is often taught to leaders in terms of how they present themselves and, and mitigate risk through the way that they're speaking in public. So has that changed for you as well?
Yes, I think that I have been seeing a lot of leaders really uncomfortable with the concept of how many unknowns. Like, what do I do with all of the unknowns? Because people are looking for me to give them answers, and the answer is I don't know. And so
that's not a comfortable place for a lot of leaders.
It's a really uncomfortable place, and so I talk about the role of leader. And the role of leader when you are leading through times of disruption like we've had. If you think about the VUCA model, right? You've got your volatility. Your role is to anchor people in vision. So convert the volatility to vision. Think about uncertainty. When you see people being uncertain, your role as much as possible is to convert that uncertainty into understanding and to take the time to work it through with people. If you see people struggling with complexity, your role is to really simplify it. Be really clear and give them very simple tips to hold that clarity after you leave the room. And if you're seeing people that are drowning in ambiguity and they're just almost frozen in their ability to understand what the next step is, your job is to recognise that ambiguity and take the time to figure out what is just the next best action. Yep. You don't have to have it fully solved, but what's the first step you can take to get them moving again? And that kind of future focus lens on what has been a VUCA model that we've all talked about as business leaders for decades is a very simple pivot, but it's orientating people forward as opposed to you having to be the holder of all of the answers, because you don't. I think the other thing to think about unknowns and converting them to unknowns is to have a practice around it. And so I advise leaders that you need to have a space with your team every week, every couple of days, where you know that your role in that meeting is, it might be a check-in or a stand-up, but your job is to collect the unknowns, acknowledge them. Some you'll be able to convert straight to knowns, but the others just say, hey, I don't know, but I hear you, it's important, I've got you, and I'll come back. And that's all people need. All people need to know is that you're taking the unknown and you'll work it out and come back to them. And that's enough for people to say, okay, I'm not going to stop and wait. They're on it. I will continue to move forward.
So you've touched on quite a bit there around the pace of change. The tempo is changing. In terms of, recovering from economies around the world that are now sliding into recession, what do you think the most productive approach to that challenge is now in terms of tackling pace of change, pivoting and really evolving and taking those steps into the future that may have otherwise been much slower?
I think that it comes down to your ability as a leader to create courage. As a leader, I wish that I had known that there was a formula to create courage. And I have the pleasure and also, the burden of half of our organisation are psychologists. Okay. So I don't get to escape. I don't get to escape a conversation about courage at Maximus. But in speaking to our psychologists, it became very clear to me that psychologists really understand how to create courage. And I said to them, why is there not a white paper on if you do these 3 things, you create courage for people?
All right, KB, what's courage. The secret? Come on, spill the beans.
It's really simple. It starts with purpose. So if you think it's a triangle, you start with purpose, and that's the first ingredient. The second ingredient that's important is the action. So understanding what is the next action to take. And the third ingredient that needs to be present is fear. And let's be honest, there's a lot of fear going. There's a lot, look, I think we've got...
No shortage.
There's no shortage of it at the moment. And unless all of those things are present, you can't create courage. Mm-hmm. And so the analogy I use is that of the skydiver. The skydiver knows its purpose. Its purpose is to jump out of the plane. And when you're up at the edge of that plane and the door opens and you're standing at the edge, fear is present. You are terrified or excited, but you are secretly scared that this is not going to end well and that you're going to be that 1%. And then you are still frozen though. You're actually frozen in action as you're standing there at that very moment. and looking over the edge, but you know that your next best action is to take that step forward. And it's only in taking that action that you then access courage. And it's the same in a work context. So if you've got someone that has purpose and action, they're possibly a motivated idiot because they don't have the right level of fear in the mix.
Yeah.
And good, so you need that fear to actually provide that guardrail in that context. If you have someone that has fear and action, what an awfully sad and unmotivating place to be, that they're just, sliding between those two dynamics. They're not really connecting that their work is meaningful and has purpose. And then if you have someone that just has fear and purpose, they're the people that are standing by right now that are watching and waiting because they're not sure about what the next thing they should be doing. So purpose, fear, next best action, create all three in a conversation, you give people the opportunity to access courage.
So we might get geeky now here for a minute. Like, I'm very passionate about science fiction, speculative fiction, but also inspiration that's drawn from literature and film, TV. Is there anything that you're seeing out there in the arts that, gives you some inspiration about what the future of leadership might look like?
Absolutely. I think that, even the simple things, like I still recall the Jetsons.
Oh, yeah.
And watching the Jetsons as a kid. And it sounds insane, but I am seeing, companies that are working on designing what the future of the sky looks like. What the future of, we talk about the Internet of Things.
Yep.
We're all at varying levels of comfort around the adoption of that technology. The reality, though, is that the next phase after the Internet of Things is the Internet of Actions. And what that's about is about saying, what are the rules and decisions I'm comfortable for machines to make without me? And what are the decisions and actions I am uncomfortable with my devices taking without my approval? If I think about the future of leadership and I think about the advances that have been made, there's one example of an organisation, and it was a musician, a mathematician and a TV show host that came together that created a technology organisation that was about mapping every 3 metres squared around the world. And that organisation has been invested in or bought out by Mercedes-Benz, and they're now using that technology in that's the experience to leverage that technology and that thinking in terms of the mapping experience in the Mercedes-Benz car. Mm-hmm. I don't think anyone ever would put a musician and a talk show host and a mathematician together and say that's the mix of skills we need to unlock the capability of the future. But that's the type of creativity I'm talking about.
Oh, super exciting. So thanks so much for sitting down, KB, and talking to us about the future of leadership. Just as you project forward, I'm not asking for a prophecy here, but when you think about your own personal vision of the future and what leadership looks like on some horizon that you set, what are you shooting for? What do you hope for?
I think that the leader of the future is inspiring, is purpose-driven, has an abundant mindset and a curiosity that not just inspires people to follow them to explore the future, but there's a joy in creating the optionality, and so that we start to remember that leadership is a creative job just as much. You are an artist. You are an artist that is painting your thoughts in the things we buy, in the experiences we have, and in the services that we create for society. And I think Albert Einstein said it best in that business is the most fascinating kind of art. And so I encourage everyone to pick up their paintbrush and get to work, because the future's waiting for us to design it.
On that note, KB, thanks so much.
Thanks so much.
And that's a wrap on the future of leadership with Katherine Boiciuc. But before you go, I'm hoping you can help me out with something. We're here to make a change, but we need your help. The purpose of this series is to move humanity forward, think bigger, and cast our minds into the future. So we'd love to know what made the biggest impression on you from today's conversation. Was it the 3 ingredients of courage, or the unprecedented demands on today's leaders? Maybe it was how conversations we have at home will shape the future of leadership. The best conversations happen right now, so please get involved, share the love, and leave a comment below. And another great place to join the conversation and find more mind-expanding content is at Futurist.world. And when you're there, be sure to sign up for access to exclusive content and awesome giveaways, including Bob Johansson's The New Leadership Literacies. You can also find us on all the usual social platforms. So thanks for joining us. The future is out there. See you next time on Futurist World.